A walk through the wilderness. If I say that phrase, perhaps something comes to mind for you. A dark forest, full of vegetation, uncertain paths. How would you feel if you had a guide, a companion, to walk through that wilderness? That's what we're talking about today. Join us inside. Welcome to the Wise Doula podcast, a place for informative, uplifting, and educational conversations. Here, we will discuss all things connected with parenting, from conception to birth, postpartum, and beyond. You are amongst friends here, so go ahead and grab a cup of your favorite drink. Remember, not caffeinated if you are expecting, and join me inside. I can't wait to speak with you. In today's episode, we're going to talk about a car drive, a knitted blanket, and phone calls. And you might be listening to me and going, Marta, what on earth are we going to talk about? Well, this episode is very special because I want to talk about perinatal loss, but I also want to leave you with some tips. If you are a professional, a nurse, a doctor, a doula, a midwife, a childbirth educator, and you are working with families that may experience loss. So I mentioned the wilderness at the beginning of the episode, and I'm going to take you for a tour into my personal wilderness. And then we're going to gather some ideas from that and see how we can apply them in the service of other people. Today, I want to talk especially to all my birth workers, nurses, midwives, OBs, doulas, childbirth and lactation educators. But I want to talk to you also, regular Joe, just going about life. Because the reality is that wilderness, we will all encounter it. The wilderness I'm talking about is loss. Life and death go hand in hand, don't they? And we accept it for adults. For children, different story. For babies, very different story. We don't want to think about babies dying. We don't want to think about the uncertainty of pregnancy or the uncertainty of postpartum. We want to think that everything is magically solved after the magical first 12 weeks pass, because so many pregnancies are lost in those first 12 weeks, that when we pass that milestone, we think we are safe. The unfortunate reality is that wilderness can come at us at any moment, at any time in pregnancy. It really can. And I want to start with a story, but I also want this episode to be about giving you practical tips, you know. You know, all my episodes, I try to give you some ideas, share with you how you can care for the people in your life. That's a big part of my mission. So the story of my loss begins with a pregnancy test and a phone call. Yep, indeed, the story of my loss doesn't begin with sadness. It begins with joy and a good sprinkle of fear and anxiety. So there I am. I'm 40. I take a pregnancy test because my period is late. And alas, 2 pink lines. I am pregnant. I already had an inkling, honestly, because that last Christmas, I was really craving crepes or pancakes, like really craving them. And I'm not a big pancake person. So I was like, curious. But I thought, maybe it's a false alarm. But more and more, I start feeling things in my body, and I'm like, let's take that pregnancy test. So I take the pregnancy test. I get the 2 lines. My husband is at work. And so I remember I was off school that day. And so I'm looking at this pregnancy test in complete disbelief. And then I text my husband. I tell him the news. He's excited. I am so scared. All the fears that I have had over time about pregnancy are all snowballing, arriving at that moment. And I am like, oh my goodness, oh my goodness. I called the clinic, and out of my mouth come those words. I took a test. I am pregnant. What do I need to do? Blah, blah, blah. I kid you not, it felt like those words came out of somebody else's mouth. It felt like such an out of body experience. And they tell me, they give me some instructions, some information. Okay. So I just go about my business. I start worrying about everything I eat, everything I drink. I'm not supposed to drink this. I'm not supposed to eat that. Is this good for the baby? Is this bad for the baby? I ask so many questions. The people from the clinic, they know me because I call and I call and I call. I'm not shy about calling. So they answer all my questions. They take care of me. They put me on some supplementation with progesterone because some of the levels are a little lower than they would like. And I just, okay, go about my day, trying my best to sort of appease that fear and celebrate that joy. And boy, am I celebrating. I'm already thinking about how I'm going to announce it to my parents, to my friends, to my knitting group at school. Because in my school, in my district, in our preschool meetings, when somebody's pregnant, they normally walk to the front of the room and announce it, and everybody celebrates them. And boy, I've celebrated so many people. I have attended so many baby showers for other babies. I can tell you, I've lost hope, but now there is hope that I will have my own baby shower and I will get to do that announcement and I will get to tell my parents in a very special way, like I've seen online a million times. It's going to be amazing. But it's before the 12 weeks, so I'm afraid to say anything. I see my best friend. I announce it to her, and she says, don't say anything before 12 weeks because you know things can happen. And she knows that well because it's happened to her. And so I don't say anything. I keep waiting for that magical number of the 12 weeks. And I think I enjoy my pregnancy, but still very much that fear is present, that what if? But the planning totally trumped that fear. I am planning a trip to my home country, to Spain. I am planning those announcements. I am planning a baptism with my uncle, who is a priest. I am planning a first communion. I am thinking about a nursery. Everything is going through my mind. And my husband and I are happily making those plans. Well, every fiber of my body said, this is what's going to happen at the end of the 9 months. But life, God, the universe had other plans. And all of a sudden, I start feeling things are different. You know, my breasts are not as sore. My belly doesn't feel full. In fact, I've been talking to my baby every night, little and all. I've been talking to her. But all of a sudden, it feels like I am talking to empty space. I get the feeling something is not right. that something is very wrong. I don't know for sure, but my mother instinct is already telling me things. So I called the clinic. Since I am 40 and I'm having some concerns, they schedule an ultrasound a little earlier than they were planning. I leave the ultrasound feeling okay, feeling like everything is good. And the next day, another phone call. Remember how I talked about the phone call to the clinic? Lots of joy and a bit of fear sprinkled in. This phone call number 2, there is no joy. It's a phone call of profound sadness. It's a phone call from a nurse at the clinic where she tells me my ultrasound doesn't match the results of my blood test. The baby is not growing anymore, and I'm going to start miscarrying. I start crying. I start asking if I did something wrong, because that's what your mind tells you. You did something wrong. Oh dear, you don't work the way you're supposed to. You're defective. You're broken. You had one job and you couldn't do it. That's what your mind is telling you. So I asked, did I do something wrong? Did I do something to harm the baby? She says, you didn't do anything wrong. It happens 1 in 4 pregnancies are lost, perhaps 1 in 3. That's a very nice statistic. But to a bereaved family, to me at that time, because my husband wasn't on the phone with me, I was at work. To me at that time, that statistic meant nothing. Nothing in the abyss of sadness that had opened up. I tell you, I had an inkling things weren't going well, but I was hoping I was wrong. But again, my mother instinct was right there. So I get told I'm going to start miscarrying at home. I get told you're not going to be pregnant anymore. Don't worry about taking the oral progesterone. You don't need it anymore. And that feels like a place where there was light and pregnancy was light. All of a sudden, there is darkness. All of my dreams, all of our dreams and our plans go up in smoke. The life we had planned with our baby goes up in smoke. Everything just. And like I said, the light is on, you're pregnant. The light is off, you're not. Today you are, tomorrow you're not. Remember those foods and drinks and all of those things that you were doing to care for your baby's health? You don't need to do them anymore because your baby is gone. That's the harsh reality you have to accept. And the fact that everybody around you is moving on because, wait, I hadn't even announced this pregnancy, so nobody knows. And grief comes at us like a gigantic iceberg. I think we see the tip. We think, oh yeah, we'll be sad for a week or two. We'll be grieving a little bit and then we'll be okay. Mm-mm. The little bit of grief we see at the beginning is nothing compared to the immensity of what comes afterwards. And we realize we're not going to be making any of those plans with our baby. And listen, loss is not like, okay, I lost my baby, I miss my baby today. No, you're going to miss your baby for the rest of your life. Every day you wake up, your baby is not here. Your baby is not here. And that is a tough, tough, tough reality. So what I remember really well from that time are the interactions with medical professionals. I tell you, those words that we tell clients or patients in the midst of bereavement, they stay with them. They are imprinted onto them like you imprint, like you put a hot iron on leather and it leaves a mark, just like that. So, what we say or don't say has a really big effect. What do I remember? I remember the kindness of the nurse that called me to tell me I was miscarrying my baby. Kind, matter of fact, professional. I think to her, it was another day at work. I don't think it was something she liked doing, having to call families to give them terrible news, but I'm sure she did it way more often than she would like to. The doctor, the OB that saw me, that didn't really want to spend the time with me, didn't really want to care for me, didn't even touch me, and showed a complete lack of compassion about the whole situation. Another nurse that called me 2 days later to confirm an appointment for my pregnancy. And I had to tell her between sobs that I was no longer pregnant. And that had been a miscommunication, of course, at the hospital. So the thing that we remember the most is those words, the words we hear, the words we are told. Some words come from medical staff, some words come from the society at large. It's okay, you can try again. You were not that far along. Don't worry, at least you can get pregnant. None of those things mean anything to us. And in fact, they hurt. And that number, that 1 in 4, well, let's see. If I was looking at my friends, Susan, Laura, Monica, Esther, that's 4 friends. 1 in 4 means one of them would experience perinatal loss. And in fact, when I'm in any big room with lots of people, lots of women, I always count and I always go, this is how many people in this room know what it feels like. And when people say, oh, it happens, some pregnancies just don't make it, it happens. Well, let me tell you, choose 4 of your best friends, put their names on paper, look at them and tell me, would you be okay with one of them missing? Would you be okay with one of them being gone? I don't think you would. None of us would. So when we tell families that it's okay, that they can try again, that they can have another baby, guess what? They don't want another baby. We don't want another baby. We want our baby. That's what we want. And we can't have that, of course. So too many words hurt. Indifference is something else that hurts. Tiptoeing around parents and trying not to talk about it so we don't suffer. We are already suffering. So you tiptoeing around it doesn't do anything. You saying words to fill the void and to fill the space doesn't do anything for us either. So words, comments have more weight than we realize. Because in a normal situation, somebody might be able to brush them off. But in a grief situation, they are like little knives plunging into your chest. I tell you, they are. So as I think about this, and I think in the context of those of us that work in birth, that work with families that are having their babies, let's realize what they've lost. It's more than an early pregnancy or this or that. It's a dream of a life together with that baby. It's a dream of all the plans that they would have done with those children. It's in many ways worse than losing an adult, because when you lose an adult, you have a lifetime of memories with them. When you lose a baby, what we have is a lifetime of memories we didn't get to make. Sometimes we're lucky we have a few items that we collected that we can put in a box and look at, but I mean, that box, no, it's just a very small thing compared to having our child here with us. So, in the context of working with patients or clients, let's think about these things, right? Let's think about how important caring for them professionally is, but how important emotions are as well. How we have to cover all of their medical needs or care needs, but how we have to also cover their emotional needs. And those, unfortunately, sometimes fall through the cracks of our systems, because we are focused on what needs to be done and how it needs to be done. But the emotions, that's really, really important. So I'm thinking about that human factor. I'm thinking about how we care for them and what they need. See, and we're gonna actually land on a few important points. See, we're actually going to pinpoint a few ideas on how to best care for patients and clients. But when I think about emotions and I think about emotional support, I know a lot of times, in spite of all our training, in spite of all our education and reading and everything, when it comes to death, the death of a baby, we feel very uncertain. What am I going to say to those parents? How am I going to console them? How can I fix it? I can't fix it. How am I going to fill the silence? There's nothing I can say to them. And see, that happened to me. So I know exactly how that feels like, because years ago, many years ago, a friend of mine went through a very difficult loss. She went through three pregnancy losses, but one of them was in the second trimester under very complicated circumstances, and she had her labor induced. When she went through labor and was in the hospital, of course, I was thinking of her. Of course. Did I plan to go to the hospital? No. Because growing up, I was always told, well, don't bother people when they're in the hospital. If it's a good time to visit, maybe better to visit them at home, blah, blah, blah. So I was operating on that mindset. Also, I was extremely afraid of what to say. From the moment my friend called me and told me that things were not going well with her pregnancy and that there was a possibility that she would be losing her baby, I remember crying for her, sobbing, just feeling for her. And I remember praying and hoping that things would work out better, that things would improve and her baby would make it. That didn't happen. So there she is in the hospital. And I probably texted her, but that was it. And my husband, who is the wise owl of the forest, I promise you, many times, he says, go visit your friend. And I said, no, 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 no. What are you talking about? I don't think she needs visitors right now. I don't. Uh. My husband said, well, send her a text and ask. If she doesn't feel like visitors, she'll tell you. And if she does, she will tell you as well. So sure enough, I text and she says, yes, come on over. I remember, like it was yesterday, driving to that hospital in the evening. It was dark. And freaking out all the way to the hospital. And I said to my husband, what am I going to say to her? And my husband said, "You don't have to say anything. Just listen. Just listen." "What do you mean, just listen?" Oh my goodness. I was so nervous. I was so nervous. I walked in there. There she was sitting in the bed. I sat down, gave her a hug, a kiss, whatever. And we probably sat in silence for a little bit. I didn't know how she was going to be. She was okay. And first we sat in silence and then we sat in conversation. I didn't ask anything. I didn't say anything. I simply let her guide the conversation. In that conversation, we had tears. We had some laughter because we both have a good, beautiful sense of humor. We had stories, and I just let her speak about what she needed to speak. And without knowing it, I was providing doula support for her that night. Had no clue what a doula was. I was a teacher at the time, but I was just listening and letting her guide the interaction of what she needed. In fact, we stayed talking so long that I got my head chewed off when I left the hospital because it was past visiting hours. So while I was in the room, her nurse was kind of like, "I'm not gonna say anything, it's okay." But when I walked by the nurse's station afterwards, I got yelled at for sure. But what a teaching moment that was. And it was many years ago. It was more than 10 years ago. And that's really what I want to bring to you. As you are caring for patients, as you are caring for clients that are going through perinatal loss, as you worry about what you're going to say, what you're going to do, what if this, what if that, listen, just go slow and low. Go gentle, okay? Go gentle. Be with the family and see what they need. Is it silence that they need? Do it. There is such power in silence. We're a bit uncomfortable by silence, but there is such power in just sitting and holding that space for them. Is it gentle talking that they need? Is it somebody translating procedures and tests and things like that and what's going to happen with them and their baby? Perhaps that's what they need. Is it taking a little bit more time with the paperwork or giving them space by themselves and coming back to the room a little later? Now, I am saying all these things understanding that if you are in medical care, you have many patients to care for. You are busy, your schedule is busy, and so you don't have that luxury of spending a whole day with a family that has lost their baby. But in your interactions with them, how are you going to conduct yourself? What can you do? And the biggest lesson is they are going to tell us what they need. They are going to show us what they need. There is a quote I really love that comes from this book, Companioning at a Time of Perinatal Loss. And I will put the link to this book in the show notes. And in this book, the authors, who are registered nurses, talk about how we walk through the wilderness with families. We are not the experts in this situation. We are walking with them through this wild place that they've never walked before. And we are offering them companionship and guide. We are not telling them what to do, but we are companioning and guiding. And there is a big difference with that, right? So what that looks like is, yes, you absolutely follow all the procedures that are needed for the family, for the baby. You follow everything you need to follow. And then you take care of their emotional needs as well, the best you can. Like I said, a small interaction can mean a lot if you are sensitive to what the family needs at that moment. And I'm not saying that happens overnight. It's something that as professionals we need to develop. Okay. But that definitely is one big thing. So going gentle, translating what's happening for the family, utilizing silence or small language, conversation, if that is what needs to happen. Coming back at a later time, offering them support from the chaplaincy services at the hospital or their local church, etc. That's how we show up for families emotionally. Now, I, of course, understand now there is another side to this, right? We have the side of caring for patients and clients and doing our best for them. We also have the side of caring for ourselves. Now, something that I am passionate about as well is that client patient care, but also your own care, our own care. The reality is that whether in nursing or in midwifery or in doula work, we have a very busy schedule. We have lots of clients and patients to see, depending on your job title, client or patient. And we're rarely working with one family only. We're working with multiple families. So a lot of times we do great at the patient client front, caring for them, taking care of their needs, supporting them. But we forget that we too, in spite of busy schedules, in spite of all that, we too need care. It's two sides of the same coin, honestly, because if you think about it, we're all human beings trying to figure out this thing called life and trying to figure out this thing called grieving. The family is grieving in a very special way. As professionals, we are also grieving in a special way. Because for us, it might not be the immensity of that one loss, but it's the immensity of many losses. And it's the reality that tomorrow you wake up and you go take care of other patients and other clients, and life continues and you keep going. Sometimes in keeping going, we become a little bit like the Energizer Bunny. We just go, 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 and we put our needs last. Those of us in caring professions are good at putting our needs last sometimes. So, what am I asking you to do? I'm asking you to recognize that your heart needs mending too. That it is absolutely normal to feel sad, depleted, and devastated when we experience bereavement at work, loss at work. That there is only so much that you can do in your professional capacity. Because underneath all that, you're a human being with human needs. And so understand that that grief is normal. Recognize that it is hitting you. Study why this case or that case or this patient or that patient is hitting you harder. What is happening? Reflect on your own emotions. They are valid and they are real. And we know we cannot be weeping and in deep sadness when we are working with patients and clients. We have to maintain professionalism. But we still need those spaces to release all of that. So I invite you to sit in a period of reflection and think about your own self-care style. What are the things that healed you and healed you deeply? And also to think about help. You know, I'm huge on help. I talk about it in almost every episode. Help is so important. So important. And sometimes we think, I can manage, I'm okay. I don't need to ask for help. Ask for help. Please ask. So, after you've had that period of reflection, of understanding your own self care style, your own needs, of understanding why this situation with this family or that situation has hit you harder, has affected you more, then it comes time for laying out your plan. And before we get to the plan part, I want to share another story with you. You know, nurses, birth workers care for their patients and clients so much. There are no words to express how much we care. And we are always looking for ways of protecting our hearts, like I said, while we're effectively at work. But then we come out of it, we come back home and we pour out, right? There is so much in our vessel that we need to release some of that pressure. And I think of the story of a friend of mine that was part of my knitting group, that was a retired pediatric nurse. And she told me that she lost so many patients over the years and never allowed herself a big room to grieve because she had to keep going. She had to take care of other kids. And so finally, when she retired, she decided to knit a blanket for all the children that had died while she was a nurse. And she told me that as she started knitting and thinking of all those babies and children, the tears started flowing. And it was like all the grief that she had accumulated came out and poured out of her. I think it's a beautiful story because the truth is, those little ones that passed away, they stay with us. You know, we remember them. And they, in a way, become part of our lives too. And we find avenues to honor them. And that knitted blanket was an amazing avenue to honor them, of course. I have also done my own memory blanket for our baby, and I can tell you it was very, very healing. So I want to encourage you to have an emotional first aid toolkit, okay? To think of the ways that you can care for yourself. You're doing excellent and caring for others. Now you need to care for yourself. So, what are some of the tools you have at your disposal? You might have your own kit. I am happy to share mine with you. So, what am I looking at? I'm looking at when faced with grief, when faced with loss, talk to a supervisor or more senior birth worker. Okay. They are going to be able to be a good landing place for you to talk about how you're feeling. So that could be our number one tip. Our number two, talk to a coworker that you really trust, that you know will keep everything you say confidential. Because ultimately, we need to lean on other people. We cannot do this alone. Number three, what is your own self care as you go home? What is your style of care? What are the things that replenish you and fill you up? Is it your spiritual life? Is it some sort of caring for your body? Is it engaging in creative activities? Perhaps journaling? Perhaps taking an extra nap? Whatever it is that fills your cup, that's also what you need to identify. Number four, it would be create a community of support. Are there other nurses or doulas in your team that would like to support each other? Create that support. Create a system for checking in and seeing how everybody in that small team is doing. We're going to check in once a week. We're going to see how everybody's doing. We're going to have a small group or a coffee once a week where we can check how everybody's doing. You decide your style. Number 5 for me, and equally important, if you feel a calling to learn more about bereavement and about grief, I would encourage you to definitely train further and learn more about it. But ultimately, I want to give you this space to say, hey, you're human too. It's okay to feel terrible about it, but by putting it in a box and trying to keep going like the Energizer Bunny with those symbols, ching, 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 you're not doing yourself a service and you're not doing a service to the families that you will take care of in the future. We all understand that grief is hard, that working with families in bereavement situations is extremely hard. But remember, your interaction, your silence, your calm, your words, all of those are going to create an impact and they will become a part of that family's history. And if you're feeling a little wobbly in any of those areas, please, by all means, lean on somebody else. And if there is somebody in your team that is new or younger or a little more inexperienced, definitely wrap your arms around them and support them. And if you are just a family member, just a friend that is supporting somebody in bereavement, please, please, please take the best care of them. Please encourage them. Listen to them. Allow them to feel what they are feeling. That's the most important thing. And today I want to encourage you to learn more about what initiatives are present in your community to help bereaved families. If there is a support group in the area, find out about them and ask if you can talk to the people that run it. Learn more about what's available. Did you know that there are organizations that utilize recycled wedding gowns and they make tiny baby gowns for babies that departed too soon? Another organization, they make tiny blankets that you can put with your baby when you bury them. There are organizations that provide cattle cots to hospitals, which are specially designed cooling cots that can keep the baby in good shape so the entire family can spend time with the baby and say goodbye. There are so many initiatives out there. Did you know also that there is bereavement photography, that we can do a photo session with bereaved parents and take pictures of them holding their baby? Or if they don't have the baby remains, we can do pictures of them holding little booties or a special pendant or a heart or a teddy bear. There is such beauty in helping families remember their babies. So I really encourage you to find out more about what's available in your community. And I know it's hard to talk about death, the death of a baby. But you know what? Since it happens, and it happens all the time, grow yourself, learn more, and understand how to really support people when they are going through it. Because at the end of the day, that's all we all want, isn't it? We don't want to feel lonely. We don't want to feel isolated or different. We want to feel that we're part of a community, and we create community by supporting each other. Well, I know this has been an intense episode, but I appreciate you being here. And I will see you next week. Bye. Hey, you have listened to the Wise Doula podcast today. Thank you so much for joining us. Remember, everything we discussed today was meant for entertainment and educational purposes only. It does not substitute the advice of your medical provider. Would you do us a favor? Follow me on Instagram at LovingBellyDoula. Also, let me know what other topics you would like to see me discuss in this podcast. And please subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platforms. Thank you so much. I will see you next week.